a comment I get sometimes from women in my childbirth prep classes is, oh, you're so lucky. Like, because you do this kind of work, like you must not have any fears going into pregnancy. Like you must be so confident and like secure and trusting your body. And and in some ways, yeah, you know, I mean, I have a lot of tools to help reduce anxiety. I have a lot more knowledge than I did when I was pregnant with my son. So in some ways, I think like, yeah, I am lucky, but I'm human. And I actually have had a lot more fears come up during this pregnancy than when I was pregnant with my son. And there's a few obvious reasons for this. You know, one, I was a lot younger when I was pregnant with my son. So risks of like Downs, trisomy 13, different defects. And part of this is just being naive, but I just wasn't worried about it at all. It's like, I'm super young. I have received like really extensive genetic testing back in my 20s. And so I know that I'm only a carrier for something called Wilson's disease, which isn't that serious. So I just wasn't afraid of that. Like with the blood tests for Downs and all that, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm sure it's fine. So yes, so my age is different. I'm now in my mid-30s. Something else is the miscarriage that I had. So, you know, with my son, I had never miscarried. I never had any reason to think. I mean, I kind of knew the statistics. You know, I knew that miscarriage happens to a lot of women, but I had, again, back to being naive, I really believed like, yeah, but that won't happen to me. So now fast forward to this, my third pregnancy, I have miscarried. I know that, oh no, this can happen to me. Like I can lose a pregnancy. You know, like the bleeding that I'm so afraid of, the not seeing a heartbeat, like I've experienced that. And I know it's awful. And I know it's possible for me. So that was one of the first fears that came up, you know, when I found out I was pregnant, was like, okay, but what if I miscarry again? And I knew, you know, it's like, it's more rare to have a repeat miscarriage than to have that first miscarriage. That was slightly comforting, but that was still like every time I went to the bathroom. And I did have some spotting. I did have moments where I wiped and there was blood. And in those moments, I was so sure, I'm like, I'm miscarrying again. And I would like try to wrap my mind around it. And then the next fear was that there won't be a heartbeat. So I requested to have an ultrasound at 6 weeks, knowing that sometimes around 6 weeks, even if it's a healthy pregnancy, they can't see the heartbeat. So I knew that was a possibility, but I also knew that more often than not, they should be able to see something at the 6-week ultrasound. So leading up to that, I was really scared. I think I even was probably experiencing some PTSD, like, because I had 5 ultrasounds before I officially found out that, like, yes, that I had a missed miscarriage, that the embryo was not developing. So many ultrasounds where you go in being like hopeful, like maybe this is the one where I'm gonna see the heartbeat, and nope. So this ultrasound, I was terrified. And then and luckily this ultrasound tech was great. She like went directly to the baby, found the heartbeat, and I just like, oh, I was just bawling. It took like 10 to 15 minutes before she could continue the ultrasound because I was so relieved. Just made me cry again. I was so relieved. And so that was a big step forward with like one more fear kind of down. At that point, I knew, of course, that I could still miscarry. Plenty of women see the heartbeat, and then a couple weeks later, there's no heartbeat, but I felt a little bit more secure. Felt not that fearful for a couple of days. And then when I realized like, okay, around 10 weeks is when they can do a blood test where they test for like Downs, trisomy 13. It's I think the acronym is NIPT, the NIPT test. I'm not sure if that's what they call it, but it's NIPT. And that's what it tests for. It's a blood test. It also tests for the sex. So that's an exciting part. You get to learn if it's a boy or a girl. Or again, you don't learn the gender, but you learn the sex. And so that became my new big fear. Like I was a little bit concerned that I was going to have another boy because I wanted a girl. But of course I'd be happy with either. That wasn't a big concern, but I became really afraid that the test was going to come back showing signs of like Downs or, you know, something serious. So I got past that hurdle, and it took 2 weeks to get the results. It was awful. And I called my poor doctor's office every single day, demanding that they get the results. And so finally I did and got past that hurdle. And so now I'm at a phase where I'm feeling more secure. But I also kind of have that feeling like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like I haven't gotten to the stage of pregnancy where I can feel the baby moving. So it still feels a little bit unreal. Like every time I get to hear her heartbeat during prenatal appointments, that's really encouraging. But my brain can kind of just like run away with anxiety at 3 a.m. Because again, I don't have, like when the baby starts to move, you have a little bit more of, you know, that encouragement, like, okay, they're still there, they're still alive, they're still moving. Oh, and beyond that, so the next kind of thing I'm nervous about is at 20 weeks, they do the anatomy scan, and they can look for a lot of different defects. And so obviously I'm nervous about that too. And I think this is just going to be a pregnancy where I just have to take it one day at a time. I don't think that there's going to be like a certain point where I'm like, okay, now I'm good and now I'm totally free of fear. I think it's going to be an ongoing process. I think I'm going to keep having to really work the fear release tools that I write about in my book. I have a video and a meditation on here about that. I've really been having to take big doses of my own medicine, and it's helping, you know, it's all helping. It's certainly not like erasing my fears, but it's reducing the big emotions and the distraction that can come with them. It's making them more manageable. And yeah, you know, to moms that have experienced loss, if, you know, you've had babies with different defects and you're pregnant again, obviously it's a more loaded experience than if none of that has happened to you before. Not to say you can't still have those fears if you never personally experienced that. But yeah, it feels like this whole other layer when like you have realized that, oh, this stuff can happen to me. Yeah, so anyways, that's some insight into what I'm experiencing, and for moms to know that like even if you're like, you teach about this kind of stuff and you do meditation, you do all of that, like you're not immune to feeling like the fears and anxieties, and feeling that certainly doesn't make somebody weak or anything like that. It's so incredibly normal. You know, we love these babies from the moment we realize that we're pregnant, and it matters so much. And so, of course, like anything that could go wrong scares us. Yeah. So if you're experiencing similar fears or other fears that I didn't mention, hang in there, take it one day at a time. You can try out the fear release meditation I have on here. I also have, I think it's just called like fear release exercise. And then there's also something called EFT or emotional freedom technique, the video that I have on here, that is also helpful with releasing those fears, like journaling. If you have really intense fears that are debilitating, I really recommend seeing a counselor, which I have done before, and it's really, really, really helpful. All right, sending you so much love. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about my fears.